The market was loud, full of shouting voices and heavy smells. Creatures from many worlds moved between stalls, buying and selling things: food, weapons, tools, even living beings. In the middle of all this noise, a young alien girl stood silently. Her name was Liriana. Her arms were tied with glowing cuffs, her head lowered, her long silver hair covering half her face. She didn't cry, she didn't fight, she simply stood still, like her soul had already given up. Her father stood beside her, tall and cold, speaking to a fat trader with green skin and gold rings. "She's strong, young, and obedient," the father said. "You won't find better." The trader laughed. "Showing sharp teeth, she'll better be, or I'll return her in pieces." Liriana didn't even flinch. A small crowd gathered around them, some curious, some disgusted, but no one did anything. No one cared, except one. A human man stood near the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, watching with narrowed eyes. His name was Grant, a traveling mechanic and trader from Earth. He had seen many cruel things in the galaxy, but something about this scene made his chest tight. Maybe it was the way Liriana didn't even try to look around for help. Maybe it was the way she accepted it all like it was normal. He couldn't look away. The deal was made quickly. A chip was handed over, and Liriana was pushed forward like luggage. The green trader pulled her by the chain and dragged her toward his ship. Grant stepped forward, his voice calm but loud. "Wait." Everyone turned. The trader frowned. "What do you want, human?" Grant walked closer. "How much did you pay for her?" The trader blinked, then laughed. "More than you can afford." Grant pulled out a black chip and showed it. "Try me." The trader's eyes widened slightly, then smiled slowly. "You want to buy her. Why?" Grant shrugged. "I need help on my ship, and she looks useful." Liriana didn't react. Didn't even raise her head. The trader thought for a moment, then grabbed the chip from Grant's hand and shoved Liriana forward. "She's yours," he said. "Don't come crying when she runs or bites." Grant caught her gently, holding her by the shoulders. She didn't resist, didn't speak, just stood still, like she didn't care who owned her now. Grant looked into her pale blue eyes. "What's your name?" "Silence. Do you understand me?" he asked softly. She gave a small nod. "Liriana," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He smiled kindly. "Nice to meet you." "Liriana, I'm Grant." She looked away, unsure what to say. Together, they walked toward his small ship, parked near the edge of the station. As they entered, Liriana looked around, expecting cages or weapons or orders, but there was none of that. Grant led her to a small room, clean and quiet, with a soft bed. "This is yours," he said. "You're not a slave here." She blinked, confused. He pointed to a panel on the wall. "Food button. Push it any time." She stood still, not moving. Grant sighed. "Okay, I'll leave you alone now. If you need anything, just ask." He walked out, leaving the door open. Liriana slowly sat on the floor, not the bed, hugging her knees. She didn't believe this was real. She had been traded like meat, owned like a pet, hurt many times. No one had ever given her a room or asked her name. This human. He was strange, kind. She closed her eyes, listening to the soft hum of the ship. For the first time in years, no one shouted at her, no one hit her. Just silence, and maybe hope. But deep inside, she wondered, how long before he changes too? She didn't know, but something inside her, something small and broken, began to flicker again. A tiny spark, and sparks, when protected, can turn into flame. The ship floated quietly in space, away from the noise of the alien market. Inside, Liriana sat on the cold floor of her new room, arms around her knees, staring at nothing. The soft bed was untouched, the food dispenser unused. She didn't trust comfort, not after what life had taught her. She had learned one truth's kindness was always followed by pain, so she waited for the human to show his real face. Grant sat in the cockpit, reading an old manual, his feet up. Mind thinking about the girl. He didn't understand why he had stepped in. He wasn't a hero, not a fighter, just a mechanic. But when he saw her face, he felt like he had seen a ghost. His daughter had once looked at him like that, empty, lost, afraid, and he had lost her years ago, during a raid he couldn't stop. Maybe that was why he couldn't walk away this time. Later that evening, he went to check on Liriana. She was still sitting on the floor, same spot, same blank stare. "Hey," he said softly, "you hungry?" She didn't answer. Grant walked in, keeping his distance, and pushed the food button. A small tray came out, hot soup and bread. He placed it on the ground near her, then sat against the wall. "Far away, no tricks," he said. "Just food." Liriana looked at the tray, then at him. She slowly crawled forward, picked up the bread like it might vanish, and took a small bite, her eyes closed, tears silently falling. She hadn't tasted real food in weeks. Grant didn't speak, just watched her eat. After she finished, she wiped her hands on her sleeve and whispered, "Why?" Grant looked at her, confused. "Why what? Why ... not hurt?" she asked, her voice shaking. Grant sighed, "Because you don't deserve that." Liriana blinked, like she didn't understand those words. "No chains," she whispered, almost afraid to believe it. Grant stood up, walked to the door, and looked back. Sleep on the bed, not the floor. She nodded slowly. That night, she waited hours before lying on the bed, touching the pillow like it was gold. She didn't sleep much, but for once, she didn't have nightmares. The next morning, Grant heard a noise in the engine room. He rushed in, thinking something was broken. To his surprise, Liriana was there. Holding a wrench, fixing a loose pipe, he raised his eyebrow. "You know tools?" She looked at him nervously. "I watch. My uncle fixed things." Grant smiled. "You did it right. Not bad." A small smile appeared on her lips, just for a second. He handed her another tool. "Want to help me today?" She nodded, something warming inside her chest. They worked together, side by side. Grant showed her how to clean engine filters, repair circuits, and check fuel lines. She learned fast, her fingers quick and careful. At lunch, he handed her a sandwich. And she sat beside him this time, not across the room, not on the floor. "Liriana," he said, "you're not a slave here. You're crew now." She looked at him, unsure. "Crew?" He nodded. "Means we help each other, fix things, fly together, and eat together." She lowered her eyes, her voice small. "I don't know how to be that." Grant smiled kindly. "We'll learn together." That evening, Liriana cleaned her room, folded the blanket, and even combed her hair. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw something different. Not just a broken girl anymore. Later, she walked to Grant's cabin and knocked softly. "Come in," he said. She entered, holding a small broken gadget. "Can we fix this?" Grant looked at the device, smiled, and said, "Let's do it." As they worked, laughter slowly returned to the ship. Not loud, not sudden, but gentle, like spring rain after a long winter. For the first time, Liriana didn't feel like property. She felt like someone. She felt like a person. She didn't say it out loud, but inside, she made a quiet promise: if he keeps being kind, I will never betray him. But far across the stars, in a smoky room filled with angry voices, her old owner slammed his hand on the table. The human took her. He growled. Then the human dies. A dark plan began to form. Liriana's peace wouldn't last forever, but for now, in the quiet ship, the girl once traded like trash began to dream again, and this time her dream had a name: Hope. The ship Trembled. A loud warning beep echoed through the halls. In the cockpit, red lights flashed as Grant frowned at the controls. "Damn it," he muttered. Not now. Outside, space was quiet, endless, and cold. But inside the ship, something was wrong. The main engine had started to overheat. Grant rushed to the engine room. Coughing as smoke filled the air, he grabbed a fire tube and sprayed the control panel, trying to cool it down. Nothing worked. The backup coolant system was offline. They were drifting toward a gravity field that could crush the ship in minutes. He tapped the comm panel. "Liriana, stay in your room. We've got trouble." No reply. Grant didn't have time to worry. He dropped to his knees. Pulling open a floor panel to reach the lower piping system, his hands moved fast, trying to release the pressure manually. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound behind him. He turned his head and saw her Liriana crawling out from another access tunnel. Covered in grease, holding tools. "Didn't I tell you to stay back?" Grant said, surprised. Liriana's eyes were focused, determined. "I know this part." She said quickly, "My uncle used to fix engines like this. Your coolant valve is stuck." Before he could answer, she slid beside him and reached into a narrow gap he couldn't fit his hand through. Her fingers moved fast, calm, confident. Click. His steam released. The engine's noise lowered. The red lights faded, and the warning alarm stopped. Grant stared at her, stunned. Liriana wiped her hands and gave a small nod. "It's okay now," Grant chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You just saved the ship." She looked down, unsure how to react. "No, really," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Without you, we'd be space dust." She blinked, then smiled just a little, but it was real. That smile lit something inside Grant. A feeling he hadn't had in years. Pride. "You're more than crew now," he said. "You're my co-pilot." Later, in the common room, Liriana sat on the couch eating noodles, her legs tucked under her. She watched old Earth videos on a screen, dogs running on grass, children laughing, music in the air. She had never seen anything like it. She turned to Grant. "Earth. Is it like that?" Grant nodded, sipping his drink. "It used to be, before the wars." She tilted her head. "Why did they fight?" Grant sighed. "Same reason most beings do: power, fear, greed." Liriana looked down, then whispered, "My people. Sold me for food." Grant didn't speak right away. Then he said, "That wasn't your fault." She nodded slowly, then asked, "Will you sell me too?" "Someday." Grant put down his cup. "Never." Her hands trembled a little, but she smiled again. Bigger this time. Over the next few days, Liriana became a shadow in the ship. Not hidden, but everywhere, fixing wires, organizing tools, cleaning ports, and learning fast. She was quiet, but sharp. And Grant noticed how fast she remembered things. One night, he found her in the engine room, upgrading a cooling system using spare parts. He watched in silence, amazed. "You know," he said, "you're a better engineer than half the people I've worked with." She looked at him, eyes wide. "Really?" "Really," he said, smiling. "You've got a gift." Liriana touched her chest, feeling warmth again. Something she couldn't explain, but peace doesn't last forever in space. A small ship passed close to theirs 2 days later, sending a silent signal. Grant's scanner picked it up, was encrypted. He didn't like that. "Someone's tracking us," he muttered. He didn't tell Liriana yet. She was finally smiling, finally starting to feel safe. He didn't want to ruin that. Not yet, but he tightened the ship's defenses just in case. Later that night, while Liriana slept, curled up in her room with a small pillow under her cheek, Grant stood outside her door, thinking she wasn't just a rescued girl anymore. She was becoming family. He felt it, deep down, like a second chance the universe had thrown his way. But someone out there wanted her back, and he knew they wouldn't ask nicely. He walked back to the cockpit, sat down, and stared at the stars. "If they come," he whispered, "they'll have to go through me first." Because Liriana wasn't property, wasn't a slave, wasn't weak. She was the girl who fixed his engine, saved his ship, and healed something inside him he thought was broken forever. The ship had been quiet for days, too quiet. Grant could feel it in his bones like a storm waiting just beyond the stars. Liriana had been smiling more, laughing at old videos, even humming softly when fixing wires. But Grant's eyes were always watching the radar. Then it came. A flashing red dot appeared on his screen. A ship, approaching fast. No ID, no signal greeting. Grant stood from his seat, voice tight. "Liriana, come to the cockpit." She arrived. Within seconds, hands still covered in tool grease. "What is it?" He pointed at the screen. "Trouble." She stared, then her face turned pale. "That signal." "I know it." Grant turned toward her. "Who is it?" She swallowed. "The one who bought me before you." "His name is Korvac," he said. "If I ever ran, he'd find me." Grant's jaw tightened. "Well, he found us." The enemy ship stopped a few meters from theirs and sent a direct message. A growling voice came through the speakers. "Human vessel, release the girl named Liriana. She is stolen property." Grant hit the reply button, his voice calm but firm. "She's not property. And she's not leaving this ship." The voice laughed coldly. "You do not understand who you're talking to. I have contracts. I have power. And I have friends in high places." Grant didn't back down. "And I have shields, guns, and no patience for slavers." There was silence. Then the voice replied, "You have 1 hour to surrender her, or we board your ship." The call ended. Liriana stood frozen, her hands shaking. "I knew this would happen," she whispered. "You should have let me go before." Grant turned to her. "Look at me." She raised her eyes slowly. "I'm not giving you back." "Not to him. Not to anyone," he said. "But we need proof you're not his." She nodded. "There was no contract. My father never signed the right papers." Grant smiled. "Then we've got a chance." He tapped his comms and opened a secret channel. A face appeared on the screen, an older alien woman in a clean uniform. Her name was Officer Naira Grant. She said, "Haven't heard from you in a while." "Need your help," he said quickly. "A slaver is trying to take my crew member, says she's his property." Naira's face turned serious. "Do you have her birth data?" Liriana stepped forward. "Yes. I memorized my family's registration code." She spoke the numbers clearly. Naira nodded. "Give me 10 minutes, outside." The enemy ship began charging its docking arms. Inside, Grant loaded his old plasma rifle and placed it near the door. Liriana stood by him, eyes burning with fear, but also something else, strength. 10 minutes later, Naira called back. "You were right," she said. "No contract was ever filed, and the trade was done illegally." Grant grinned. "So she's free?" Naira nodded. "Technically, yes, but you'll need to deliver that message in person." Grant ended the call and opened comms again to the enemy ship. "Listen carefully," he said. "We checked the records. Your claim is void. She's not yours. Try boarding and you'll be violating galactic law." Silence followed, then growling. "I don't care about your laws, human. She belongs to me." Grant's eyes narrowed. "Then come get her." He shut the comms and activated the ship's defense systems. Liriana looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "I'm not scared anymore." He looked at her with pride. "Good, because they should be." The enemy ship launched a boarding hook, crashing into Grant's ship with a loud clang, smoke-filled. The hallway and metal groaned under pressure. Grant handed Liriana a small blaster. "Stay behind me, but if someone comes through that door, aim and shoot." She nodded, her grip tight but steady. The doors blasted open, and 3 alien guards stepped in. Armored and growling, Grant fired the first shot, dropping one. Liriana screamed, but didn't run. She aimed, hands shaking, and fired, hitting. One in the leg, the alien howled in pain, dropping to the floor. The third one hesitated, saw the fire in Liriana's eyes, and turned to Fleone to be met by Grant's rifle. A single shot dropped him cold. Silence filled the hallway. Smoke. Slowly clearing, Grant looked at Liriana. "You okay?" She was breathing hard, eyes wide, but she nodded. "I did it. You did," he said. "You were amazing." Suddenly, high-pitched alarm rang from the enemy ship, a retreat signal. They were leaving hours later. Officer Naira arrived with 2 patrol ships. Korvac was arrested, his ship impounded, and Liriana officially registered as free. She stood beside Grant, watching the stars. "I thought I'd be taken again," she whispered, "but you didn't let them." Grant looked down at her. "Because you're not alone anymore," she smiled. A real, bright smile. "I don't feel like a shadow anymore." Grant placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You never were, Liriana. You just needed light." But somewhere in the deep black of space, word of her survival began to spread, and not everyone was happy. The ship was quiet again. No alarms. No voices shouting threats through the comms. Just the soft hum of the engine and the steady heartbeat of peace. Liriana stood alone in the hallway, her hand resting on the cold metal wall. She had been free for days now, officially marked in the Galactic Registry as a citizen. Not a slave, not cargo, not forgotten. Still, the feeling hadn't fully settled into her bones. She kept waiting for someone to take it all away again. Grant was in the common room, fixing an old toaster, when she entered slowly. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, star mechanic, what's up?" She held something in her hands, a small black box, dusty, sealed shut. "I found this under your bunk while cleaning," she said softly. I didn't open it." Grant's eyes widened slightly. He stood, wiped his hands, and took the box. "From her gently, been a long time since I touched this," he said, voice distant. Liriana tilted her head. "Curious, what is it?" He sat down on the couch, patted the seat next to him. She hesitated, then sat beside him. Grant opened the box slowly. And inside were pictures, small toys, and an old bracelet made of woven string. "That's my daughter," he said, pointing to a faded photo of a smiling girl with short, curly hair. "She looks kind," Liriana whispered. "She was," Grant said. "She died 5 years ago when raiders attacked a colony where we lived." Liriana looked at the bracelet. "Is that hers?" Grant nodded. "She made it for me. Said it would protect me from space monsters." Liriana smiled faintly. "Did it work?" Grant chuckled. So far, there was a quiet pause. Then she asked, "Is that why you saved me?" Grant looked at her. "At first, maybe," he admitted. "But now, I'd fight for you even if I'd never had a daughter." Her eyes softened. "Why?" "Because kindness," he said, "is not a program, not a duty. It's a choice," he continued. "A protocol I follow, even when it's not easy." Liriana repeated the word softly. Kindness protocol. Later that day, Liriana walked through the ship slowly, touching walls, checking systems, adjusting cables. She no longer felt like she was walking through someone else's home. She belonged here, in the engine room. She placed a small sticker of a flower on the side panel, her own little mark. Back in her room, she drew a symbol on a notepad, a hand. Holding light, she labeled it Protocol 1. Grant was asleep when the message came through. A quiet beep, blinking blue, marked private from Earth. Liriana was near the control room, doing a diagnostic scan, when she noticed the signal. She hesitated, then tapped the screen. The message appeared. Words written in Earth's standard language. Grant D. Holloway, your request for trade license. Renewal is incomplete. Missing psychological fitness record. Please upload logs or testimony to complete the file. Liriana frowned, confused. Then opened the attached list. One line stood out, blinking red. Proof of purpose for continued space. Travel, none? Liriana stared at it, her heart beating faster. What if Grant lost his license? What if he had to return to Earth? What if he left her? She didn't want to go back to her planet. She didn't want to lose her sky, her room, her place. She didn't want to lose him that night. While Grant was fixing a loose valve, Liriana approached him, holding a small data stick. What's that? He asked. I made something, she said, for your license? He blinked. Curious, you did. She nodded and handed him the stick. When he played the file, her voice came through quiet. Calm, but full of truth. This is Liriana. I am co-pilot and mechanic on Grant Holloway's ship. He saved my life and gave me a home. He teaches me, he listens to me, and treats me like I matter. When others saw a thing to own, he saw a person. I don't know how to write big words, but I know he makes this ship more than metal. He makes it feel like family. Grant didn't speak for a long time. When the file ended, he looked at her, eyes slightly wet. You wrote that. For me. She nodded, biting her lip. Is that okay? He laughed softly. It's more than okay. Then he stood and hugged her gently. She stiffened at first, then slowly, quietly, hugged him back. Later that week, the license was approved. Grant's status was cleared for full galactic travel and mentorship, and Liriana was listed as official crew under her name. One word stood out in bold letters, family, but as the ship drifted peacefully through a nebula, somewhere in the shadows of deep space, a different ship watched them silently. It didn't carry kindness. It didn't carry law. It carried revenge. The lights of Dalrec Station shimmered in the dark like a floating city in the stars. It was a place of trade, repairs, and rest for travelers from hundreds of worlds. Grant's ship, the Silver Ember, approached with slow grace. Liriana stood by the window, eyes wide, never having seen something so alive and bright. Looks like a dream, she whispered. Grant smiled from the pilot seat. Let's hope it stays that way. They had come to pick up new fuel cells and food packs. Nothing dangerous, nothing risky. Just a simple stop, but fate had other plans. The docking went smooth. Liriana carried a checklist, excited to walk beside Grant in public for the first time. No cuffs on her wrists, no guards around her, just freedom. They moved through the wide halls of Dalrex, passing tall aliens, tiny traders, and flashing neon signs. Liriana's eyes darted from one shop to another, taking in everything. Grant handed her a small device. Here, spend some credits, buy something nice for yourself. She blinked. Really? He grinned. Crew bonus. She hugged the device to her chest and ran toward a nearby booth selling crystal pendants. Grant turned to pay for the supplies, unaware of the danger entering the station behind him. In a shadowy hallway, a tall alien with dark armor and glowing eyes walked quietly with two others. Korvac's brother Drelth had come to finish what the law couldn't. He didn't care about papers or rules. He wanted revenge. The human had embarrassed his family, had taken what they claimed was theirs, and he would bleed for it. Liriana returned minutes later, holding a silver-blue pendant that shimmered like a frozen star. She smiled proudly. I picked the one that reminded me of your engine core. Grant chuckled. You're such a mechanic. Suddenly, a loud blast echoed through the station. Screams followed, and lights flickered. Security alarms blared as people ran in all directions. Grant grabbed Liriana's hand, back to the ship. Now? They ran through the chaos, dodging debris and frightened crowds. But just as they turned a corner, a wall exploded beside them. Drelth and his guards stepped out, weapons ready. There she is, Drelth growled. And there's the filthy human. Grant pushed Liriana behind him, eyes narrowed. You don't want to do this. Drelth raised a blaster. You took something from my family. Now I take everything from you. Without warning, he fired. Grant shoved Liriana aside and took the shot in the shoulder, falling hard to the floor. Liriana screamed. Rushing to his side, he groaned, blood spilling. Liri. Run, but she didn't run. She picked up the blaster Grant dropped and pointed it at Drelth with both hands. Shaking badly. Stay back, she shouted. Voice breaking, or I shoot. Drelth laughed. You? A little girl with a toy. I'm not a slave, she said, stepping forward. Not anymore, she fired. Hitting one of the guards in the chest, he collapsed with a grunt. Smoke rising from his armor. Drelth snarled. Kill her. The other guard raised his weapon but before he could shoot, a loud zap knocked him out cold. Behind them, Officer Nira appeared with a team of security bots. Drop your weapon, Drelth, she ordered. You're outnumbered, Drelth hissed. Aiming his gun at Liriana one last time, but Grant, still bleeding, rolled over and fired a single shot hitting Drelth in the leg. He dropped with a roar of pain, and the bots moved in to arrest him minutes later in the station medbay. Grant lay on a bed while a nurse cleaned his wound. Liriana sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. You scared me, she said, voice shaking. You did great. He whispered, you protected me. She looked down. I didn't think. I didn't want to lose my home. Grant squeezed her hand. You didn't, and you never will. Nira stepped into the room, nodding. He'll be locked up for good. Both brothers gone now. She looked at Liriana. You've changed a lot, Liriana. Nodded, because someone showed me what kindness really means. The next day, they left Dalrec Station together. Grant's arm was in a sling, but his smile was strong. Liriana stood proudly at the co-pilot seat, a small badge on her chest that read, Silver Ember Crew, Level 1 Engineer. She had earned it. With courage, with skill, and with heart. But somewhere far across the stars, another voice whispered in a dark room. I've heard of the human and his alien girl. She might be useful. The voice said coldly. Or dangerous. And so the stars turned again, preparing the next test. The stars outside shimmered like tiny fires. The silver ember moved through space slowly, quietly, like a bird that had survived many storms. Inside the ship, Liriana stood by the main window, her hands behind her back, staring at the deep void. Beyond, it had been 2 months since the Dalrec Station attack. 2 months since she saved Grant's life, since she held a weapon without shaking. Since she chose to fight, not for escape, but for home. Now everything was calm, but her heart wasn't. Because a message had arrived that morning, one she hadn't told Grant about yet. Grant sat in the common room, adjusting the ship's engine logs. His shoulder was still healing, but his spirit was light. He looked up as Liriana walked in, her eyes quiet, lips pressed together. You okay, gearhead? He asked playfully. She smiled faintly, then held out a small data pad. It's for you, she said. Grant took it and read the message, his eyes scanning quickly. It was from the Galactic Education Council. They had reviewed Liriana's recent actions, her engineering reports, her bravery at Dalrex, her updated citizen status. And they offered her something rare, a place at the Interstellar Academy of Engineering and Development. Full scholarship, top-level training, her own living quarters, and safety, real safety. Far from bounty hunters, far from criminals, far from any risk. Grant looked up. This is amazing. Liriana nodded, not smiling. They say I can go next cycle, only 2 jumps from here. Grant stood slowly. Liri, this is a chance to be something big, something more. She looked away. I know. He stepped forward. Are you afraid? She shook her head. No, I'm just Not sure what more means if it doesn't include this ship. Grant paused, heart heavy. He had always known one day she might leave, that she would grow beyond the small space between metal walls and fuel lines. He just didn't expect it. "So soon, you don't owe me anything," he said softly. "You've already given me more than I ever expected." She didn't answer right away, then asked, "Would you be okay if I left?" He smiled gently. "I'd miss you every single day." She nodded, whispered, "Okay," and walked out. Hours passed. Liriana sat in her room, holding the crystal pendant she bought at Dalrex. It glowed softly in the dark. She thought about everything being traded like cargo, locked in a cage. The first time Grant called her by name, the time he let her fix the engine, and the way he never, ever looked at her like she was broken. She didn't know if others at the academy would be the same. Would they laugh at her accent, her scars, her silence? Would he accept a girl who had once been sold for food? And more than that, would she ever find another ship that felt like a beating heart? The next morning, Grant prepared the ship to dock at the transfer station, where the academy shuttle would arrive. He didn't say much, just moved slowly. Liriana walked into the cockpit, a bag over her shoulder, datapad in hand. She sat beside him quietly. "You packed?" He asked. "Yes," she answered. The station came into view, shining like a bright silver coin. "You've got everything?" he asked again, voice tight. "I think so," she replied, then looked at him. "Except one thing." He turned, surprised. She held up her datapad and tapped the screen, canceling the enrollment form. Grant blinked. "Wait, what are you doing?" She looked into his eyes, steady and calm. "I'm not going," she said. He opened his mouth to speak, but she kept going. "I thought about it all night, about who I am, where I've been. It's what I want. This ship," she continued. "It's where I became me. It's where I stopped being scared of shadows." She held her hand over her chest. "And you. You didn't just save me. You helped me become someone worth saving. I'm not running from that," she finished. "I'm choosing to stay." Grant stared at her for a long moment. Then a wide smile spread across his face. "You sure?" he asked, voice low. She nodded. "I'm not done learning here, Captain." He laughed softly, then stood and saluted her. "Welcome back to the Ember, Chief Engineer Liriana." She saluted back with a grin. "Glad to be home." They turned the ship away from the station and back into open space. Liriana sat in the pilot seat, her fingers flying over controls with ease. As stars stretched before them, she whispered, "I chose to stay. Not because I'm afraid of the world, but because I finally found my place in it." Far away, in dark corners of the galaxy, others still whispered about the girl who was once traded away, but now they spoke her name with caution. Not cruelty, because anyone who knew her story also knew this you can chain a body, but not a soul, and one kind human was enough to prove it.